Welcome to the Lumenverse, a world where the magic of storytelling unfolds through relaxing fantasy narratives. If you found pleasure in this tale and would like to delve into more stories of this kind, take a moment to give this video a like and consider subscribing to the channel for future journeys. In a tranquil forest, where fireflies danced with a mesmerizing glow and moonlight cast a silvered haze, young Elian wandered beneath the ancient trees. Draped over his shoulders was a dark green cloak, its pigment mirroring the rich hue of deep moss. Affixed to one shoulder was a singular, radiant feather, its luminescence a soft blue reminiscent of the gentle flicker of stars. This was no ordinary feather. The feather glowed with a pale, yet pulsating light, softer than a whisper, yet rhythmic like the faint beat of a heart. The feather had been bestowed upon Elian by the moonbird of Lunevale, a rare and magical being believed to favor only those with gentle spirits and unwavering determination. Elian's journey that night was not one plagued by shadows of danger, but steeped in the peaceful atmosphere of nature. He sought a hidden glade, whispered about in stories, known as the Glade of Whispers. It was said that in such a place, dreams would blossom and grow like untamed wildflowers. With each step he took, the forest extended its embrace, enveloping him in a cocoon of comfort. The rustle of leaves, gently stirred by a soft breeze, accompanied his journey, while the distant hoots of owls echoed like a lullaby. Elian frequently paused in his stride, allowing his fingers to glide across the rough bark of trees, or to pause at the side of babbling brooks that meandered lazily beside him. Each moment spent in the forest felt as if he were turning the pages of an old, long-forgotten book. When weariness took hold, Elian knelt by a moonlit stream, dipping his hands into the cool, clear waters. The faint glow of the luminescent feather danced over the winding pathway, providing a guiding light. As the journey persisted, the path eventually widened, revealing the tranquil Glade of Whispers. Moonlight shone upon the grass like jewels, glistening with dew. Soft, floating lights flickered lazily above, resembling sleepy fireflies. The surrounding trees leaned in, as if quietly listening. With a soft sigh, Elian stepped into the glade, laid down on the cool, soft earth. The glowing feather flared brighter for a brief instant before transforming into a soft blue glow beside him. As Elian drew in a deep breath, the air was saturated with a gentle, sweet fragrance, intertwined with the quiet hum of the glade, and the sound of the forest around him was reminiscent of a gentle lullaby, a tranquil melody composed of ancient magic, the promise of peaceful dreams, and the assurance of safe passage. This tale spun no yarns of monsters or battles won. There was only a young adventurer, a glowing feather that pulsed softly with an elusive light, and a forest that had waited patiently for one such as he. Sleep found its embrace easily, wrapping gently around him like a warm blanket. In his dreams, the silhouette of the moonbird gracefully circled in the night sky, a watchful guardian that shielded him from harm, until the first light of morning dared to peek through the trees. Instead of waking abruptly, Elian was gently stirred from sleep by the realization that a wispy layer of early morning mist had tenderly wrapped itself around his shoulders, its soft embrace like a cozy shawl. The glade had transformed, its former moonlit sparkle replaced by a golden haze that glowed with the warm touch of morning sunlight. Delicate tendrils of sunlight slithered through the foliage, casting a mesmerizing and dappled pattern onto the grass below. An intricate dance of honey gold and soft green. The air was filled with a soothing chorus of bird calls, a gentle melody that danced through the trees like a soft breeze. The scent of dew-dampened soil mingled with the crisp, inviting fragrance of wild pears and fresh lavender. The glowing feather remained cool and dim, its magic content to rest quietly, echoing the tranquility that enveloped the glade. Rising slowly, Elian sat up carefully, and his eyes caught sight of a new element that had appeared within the glade, something that hadn't been there before. In the very heart of the glade, there rose a single stone, its sleek, smooth surface free from imperfections. It was a stone that seemed to have materialized out of thin air, or perhaps it had always been there, and Elian simply hadn't taken notice. Engraved upon its surface was a simple, powerful word. Remember. Elian studied the mysterious rock, contemplating its meaning, while a soft stirring occurred within his chest. A memory that didn't quite belong to him, holding the promise of a future understanding. He ran a gentle finger over the carved word. The stone itself was a soft, melodic chime filled the air, its sound reminiscent of wind gently caressing a crystal glass. He pivoted, his gaze drawn toward the edge of the glade, where a slender, elderly figure now stood. Draped in a patchwork robe of muted violet and mossy brown, the individual clutched a gnarled wooden staff that emanated a subtle glow at its tip. A diminutive bird, composed completely of radiant light, perched upon the man's shoulder, and the old man offered a soft, knowing smile. With a nod, Elion stood up, his body language displaying both a hint of curiosity and a lack of unease. "Are you," he inquired, "the keeper of this glade?" The old man responded with a soft chuckle, before replying, "In a sense, I once dwelled here as a guest. Now, I might better be considered its memory, and the glowing feather, borne by you, young one, is one that this glade hasn't witnessed in a long, long time." With a touch of wonder, Elion's fingers traced over the glowing feather. "I just don't understand. Why did the moonbird choose me?" he inquired, his voice infused with curiosity. The old man's eyes sparkled gently as he responded, "It's because you walk in silence, you listen intently, and your every step is taken with meticulous care. Not all journeys are conducted amid clamor and success. Some are marked by the continual choice to bestow kindness, even when no one witnesses or acknowledges it." Elion blinked, taken aback. He had never viewed himself as courageous or extraordinary. Instead, he had simply endeavored to be gentle with all he encountered. The old man extended a hand, his gesture directed toward the central stone. "Come," he urged softly, "allow me to recount the forgotten tale. Once this is done, the choice shall be yours." And so Elion obeyed, taking his seat at the stone. The old man's voice carried tales of a distant past wherein lanterns were carried within hearts instead of hands. He spoke of individuals who listened keenly, rested deeply, and radiated warmth amid the cold, and he revealed a continuous chain of feather-bearers, each chosen not for their strength but for their inherent gentleness. As the story unfurled, the glade illuminated itself in a soft, warm light. The avian being composed of light fluttered about Elion, perching comfortably upon his shoulder, offering melodious chirps. The old man extended the offer. "You may resume your journey or stay longer. Time waits. The glade is always here." Elion sealed his eyes, surrendering to the gentle warmth of the sunlight and the feather-like weight that rested on his shoulder. For this moment, he needn't choose just yet. In this tranquil corner, enveloped by the gentle stillness of the glade of whispers, the world itself exuded a peaceful atmosphere. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself the luxury of respite. Elion remained within the glade for a period of time that danced to a different rhythm, untethered by the constraints of timekeeping. Days and hours blurred together, irrelevant to the ebb and flow of Lumenverse. The passage of time was marked by quiet moments, the gradual unfurling of a moonflower, the breathless hush before a breeze swept through, and the subtle flicker of fireflies finding sanctuary beneath the canopy of leaves above. Narelle was not a master in the conventional sense. He did not issue commands or decrees. Instead, he shared his wisdom through the simple act of storytelling. Each dawn, as morning sunlight filtered through the trees, Narelle would position himself next to Elion beneath the shade of the silver pine tree, and unbundled a small package containing dried fruits or bread. His tales varied from the great stories of the moonbird and the ancient forest to more ordinary observations. A deer who consistently returned to the same mossy pool, or the glade's radiant response to even the smallest giggles. Initially, Elion spoke in a hushed and hesitantly manner, his words laced with tentative queries and gentle astonishment. Gradually, he found himself voicing his thoughts with greater confidence, his voice growing louder. As he recounted his origins, hailing from a village cradled near rugged cliffs and the winds that carried the salty scent of the surrounding sea, he revealed his sense of isolation. He expressed his feelings of loneliness even when surrounded by others, and shared his experience of never fully merging with those around him. Narelle never interrupted, simply acknowledging each sentence with a nod and attentive ear. One afternoon, while both were settled beneath the shelter of the trees, Elion posed his query, "Why did you choose to remain amidst this glade?" Narelle's face relaxed into a gentle smile as he replied, "Because I forgot something, and this glade holds that memory." Perplexed, Elion sought clarification, inquiring, "What is it you forgot?" Narelle gazed upward, his expression soft and contemplative, as the gentle breeze whispered across the glade, carrying a subtle undercurrent of sorrow. Elion turned his focus toward Narelle, his heart moved yet calm as he inquired, "You were chosen too?" Narelle nodded, affirming, "Long ago I was. I aided those who sought direction, yet remained for too long. In the process of assisting others, I regrettably lost sight of myself." He delicately touched Elion's chest with a finger, softly instructing, "Just make sure not to emulate that mistake. Restful sojourns are healthy, but it's equally important to eventually continue one's journey." That evening, the glade presented Elion with a gracious gift. As twilight descended and stars began to sparkle against the inky canvas of the night sky, the lightbird, nestled comfortably on Elion's shoulder, began chirping a lullaby. Amidst this tranquil moment, the trees along the glade's edge shifted, revealing a path lined with silver-threaded leaves and delicate, blue-hued moss. It gently beckoned him onward. Turning to Narelle, Elion inquired, "Will we meet again?" Narelle, his eyes filled with serenity and compassion, replied with a tender smile, "Should you ever forget your path, know that the glade shall remain, and you will always find someone like me here. There is always a keeper." Elion, enveloping Narelle in a final embrace, bid him farewell. With a gentle breath, he stepped onto the shimmering path, the lightbird leading the way. He journeyed onward, no longer a lost soul, but an individual who had discovered his bearings. Amidst the tranquil ambiance, as the music gently fades away, envision Elion traversing the forest bathed in the soft glow of stars. The path before him is clear, inviting and carefully tailored to his journey. Feel the warmth that envelops you, offering protection and reassurance. Remember that you are enough just as you are. Allow yourself to rest, knowing that Elion continues his journey, his path illuminated by the softly glowing feather. Elion journeyed beneath a canopy adorned with an intricate display of stars, their faint light illuminating the tranquil surroundings. The path ahead glistened faintly, lined with a unique silver moss, and with each stride he felt a subtle lightness, as if the landscape itself was nudging him forward patiently. The lightbird fluttered ahead, casting a soft blue aura that guided his way and remained within reach without disappearing into the night. After an uncertain duration, Elion entered a previously unexplored clearing, where the night breeze whispered secrets only visible under the starlight. Here, the atmosphere was one of profound tranquility. Not the absence of sound, but the deep receptivity that comes from stillness. A shallow pool stood serenely in the center, its surface utterly immobile, serving as a mirror that captured the celestial display above. The willow trees encircled the pool in a protective embrace, their long, slender leaves cascading downward like shimmering curtains. Elion lowered himself to the water's edge, his gaze fixed upon the reflection of the night sky in the water. Initially in the reflection, Elion perceived himself as small, uncertain, and worn out. However, as the image sharpened, it started to change. His shoulders relaxed, his eyes softened, and the feather on his cloak emitted a soft pulse, resembling a heartbeat. Elion uttered, in a hushed tone, "I believe I'm prepared." The pool responded with a gentle ripple, as if acknowledging his words. And in that moment, the rustling of the willows heralded the appearance of a young girl, appearing no older than Elion himself. Elion and Kale stood in silence for a moment, their eyes meeting in the stillness of the night. Elion affirmed, his voice a soft whisper, "I'm leaving the glade." Kale's gaze fixed upon the lightbird as it perched on a nearby branch, its curiosity piqued. "You'll need a guide," her words measured. Elion responded, "The path is clear." Kale's smile held a gentle caution, "Paths change, and these forests whisper secrets. Not everything that glimmers is safe." The two companions journeyed beneath the luminescent branches of ancient trees that hummed with ages far surpassing any tale or song. And Elion felt a steadiness grow within him. As they ventured further, they encountered mesmerizing meadows illuminated with hovering lights that seemed to embody lost memories, and a flowing brook whose whispers echoed an unfamiliar language. Eventually, they arrived at a fork in the path, each route leading away from the glade. One path extended towards remote hills bathed in shimmering moonlight, while the other descended into a valley shrouded in misty clouds. Kale looked at Elion, her voice gentle but firm. "You must choose." In that moment, Elion turned his gaze toward the lightbird perched on his shoulder, his attention to the feather, the gentle glow visible against his chest beneath his cloak. He paused for a moment, closing his eyes, focusing not on voices or logic, but on a soft, glowing warmness that welled within his heart, the same sensation he had experienced in the presence of Narelle, surrounded by the glade's tranquility. And when he slowly allowed himself to believe in his own worth, his eyes opened, and with a steady hand, he gestured towards the darkened path. Kale gave him a proud smile. "That one is indeed more challenging, but I believe it's the correct choice." Standing side by side, they ventured into the shadowed vale, their footsteps steady and confident. The feather glowed gently, and the lightbird hummed a soft tune, creating a melody that echoed through the air. Somewhere in the distance, the glade released a sigh that whispered of contentment. As the melody gently fades and the forest envelops them in its ethereal embrace, trust and starlight illuminating their path, we bid Elian and Kale farewell, allowing them to venture into the wooded realm, confident in their journey and in the silent watching of the forest. In the stillness of this moment, embrace a profound sense of safety and guidance, knowing that the forest holds a watchful presence that envelops you with tranquility. Sleep now, knowing that in the depths of slumber, the forest stands ever vigilant, guarding and protecting. The silence of the vale enveloped them, its ancient trees rising like sentinels on either side, their dark bark bearing witness to the passage of time. The roots of the trees extended outward like ancient hands grasping for the earth below, and a soft violet mist draped the forest floor, its ethereal glow gently swirling around Elian and Kale as they walked. The cool air was laden with the scents of moss and stone, mingled with an even elusive aroma that seemed to echo memories far older than recollection itself. Kale's voice was a soft murmur as she shared, "This place is known as the Whispering Hollow, not inherently dangerous, though it harbors memories, fragments that slumber within us." Elian's gaze roamed the surroundings, taking in the silence that deepened with each step. Like dreams, Kale met his gaze, her expression thoughtful. "Or wounds," she in the hush that followed, they continued their journey, their footsteps creating barely a whisper as they traversed the thickening mist. Gradually, it began to materialize. The tree that emerged before them was unlike any other they had encountered, its bark shimmering like aged glass, the branches twisted into spiraling patterns, adorned with delicate strands of shimmering silk that resembled a spider's delicate craft. Yet the essence of their creation resonated with something far more magical. A hollow yawned within the trunk, and a soft, lilting voice spoke, its tone laden with intrigue. "What do you bring, child of light?" it inquired. Elian stepped forward, his words carrying a tinge of uncertainty. A feather, and perhaps a burden too." The tree's soft glow pulsated gently, its luminescence casting a warm, comforting ambience. "Enter, child," the tree's soft voice beckoned. Kale nodded, understanding that this was a moment for him to venture alone. Stepping through the hollow, Elian felt a shift in reality. He found himself floating effortlessly, suspended in the gentle embrace of warm air and soft light. In this tranquil space, he witnessed fleeting glimpses of his past, like fragments of forgotten dreams. A gentle voice, like a familiar whisper, sounded through the space, speaking directly to his soul. "You have been small, lost, quiet, and yet here you still remain." The world of memories dissolved into a cascade of stars, only to melt into the mist that enveloped the hollow. As Elian's eyes slowly unfocused back to reality, he discovered himself standing once more in the hollow, his fingers wrapped around the pulsating feather. This time, however, the feather's glow, while not growing brighter, emanated a gentle yet steady warmth, soothing his very core. His hand, once trembling, Elian emerged from the hollow, his heart filled with the warmth that only a profound realization could bring. Kale offered him a knowing smile, her words confirming the essence of his experience. "The veil has accepted you." As they ventured forth, the mist around them gradually began to clear, replaced by golden light that filtered down from above. Cast by the sun's soft glow, the trees surrounding them transitioned from darker bark to lighter tones, the air growing warmer and scented with the delicate fragrance of honeyed flowers. Amidst the trees stood a ring of ancient standing stones, encircling an ancient altar. Nestled upon the flat stone in the center lay a second feathered plume, not like his own, but a deep golden hue as if sunlight had been woven into the shaft itself. The lightbird perched nearby, its soft chirp adding to the moment. Kale stood back, allowing Elian to approach the feather, and gently he brushed his fingertips against its tips. Instantly the golden feathers radiated a soft shimmer, and for a fleeting moment, a whisper seemed to resonate within him, uttering words of purpose and significance. The golden feather dissolved into tiny shimmering sparks, one of which gracefully settled upon Elian's shoulder, right beside the lightbird. Kale stared in amazement, her eyes widening as she declared, "You have been marked." Elian turned to her, a spark of curiosity in his eyes. "Is that significant?" he inquired. Kale beamed with a knowing smile. "It's quite rare," she replied. In that moment, a laugh slipped from Elian's lips, surprising even himself. The sound of it seemed to reverberate through the trees, prompting the leaves to rustle in response. Under the starry sky, Elian and Kale nestled by the tranquil spring. Kale wrapped herself in her cloak made of moss, while Elian lay back on the soft grass, his golden feather emitting a gentle glow. In the stillness of the moment, he found peace, knowing he didn't have all the answers. Yet this time, it didn't trouble him. As sleep's embrace began to carry him away, he knew he was on the right path. With the feather in his hand and his companion by his side, he felt ready for whatever lay ahead. As sleep gently envelops you, let the tranquility of this moment soothe you. Imagine the whispering hollow falling silent, the golden feather settling softly upon your shoulder, and the gentle reassurance that you are remembered, not forgotten. With every breath, you are growing, evolving, and transforming into the best version of yourself. Embrace the journey with courage. Good night. Nestled in the farthest corner of the world, where mountains floated like islands above winding rivers, there was a hidden valley called Mistmere. Here silence reigned, broken only by the soft calls of distant birds and the whisper of clouds brushing treetops. A narrow path cut through the valley, winding around ancient trees and mist-shrouded springs. Along it walked two figures. One was young, armored, with golden hair tousled by the wind. The other was cloaked in deep navy robes, with silver streaks in his beard and arcane energy flickering faintly around his fingers. Their footsteps echoed softly against the stone path as they moved, every noise carrying through the silence. "Master Ellerin," the young knight said, his voice low and thoughtful. "How much farther until the ridge?" "Not far, Kale," the older man replied, his voice rich and calm like an old river. "But the journey is more than distance. You'll find that out soon enough." Kale adjusted the sapphire blade at his side. "You always speak in riddles," Ellerin replied with a slight smile. "And yet, you follow," he said. The sky began to soften, the gold fading to rose. The mist that clung to the valley floor shimmered like a dream, swirling around them like a phantom. By twilight, the two travelers reached the ridge, a narrow stone path that ended at a precipice overlooking a ruined castle floating among the clouds. The sanctuary of Lysra. "This was once the heart of the world," Ellerin murmured, "where magic was born." "Where I was born," Kale gazed out at the ruin, feeling the wind tug at his cloak. It whispered secrets against his skin. Kale turned in quiet awe, his gaze moving to Ellerin. "You never told me you came from here." "There is much I haven't told you," Ellerin admitted, his hand rising and the amethyst crystal on his chest pulsing gently. "But you are ready now." The wind shifted, a hush falling over the ancient sanctum. Stone bridges appeared across the floating ruins, connecting the ledge to the sanctuary. Step by step, the two walked across, passing over the still lakes and silent gardens. Stone arches, eroded by years, leaned over wild gardens where moonflowers bloomed in silence. Silver vines crept across forgotten runes carved into the stone. Ellerin halted before a giant obsidian mirror, shattered with time. Ellerin's voice softened, so gentle it was barely audible over the wind. "This place remembers me," he whispered, "and it remembers you." Kale blinked. "Me?" Ellerin turned to him fully now, his gaze more tender than Kale had ever seen. "You were not just chosen by sword," he said. "You were born of light and shadow like this place. Our bond is deeper than student to teacher." A shift in Kale's heart, a quiet warmth he had never felt before. He placed his hand on the mirror and his reflection shimmered yet remained still, and then his reflection bowed. A soft magic filled the sanctuary, rising like mist over the stones. "Your power's awakening," Ellerin said. "You are the bridge now, between what was and what must come." "But why me?" Kale asked. "Why not you?" Ellerin's eyes glinted with light. "Because I am the last of my time," he said. "Are the first of yours." Above them, stars began to fall, not as fire but like fireflies. The ruined spires slowly mended. The flowers in the garden glowed blue. For a single breathless moment, time itself reversed. The years retreated, healing the ruins like a wave washing away the present. The sanctuary was whole once more. Ellerin placed a warm hand on Kale's shoulder, and the ancient magic passed as memory, as truth, as love. As the first rays of dawn pierced the clouds, the sanctuary shone with new life. "You carry the past in your scars," Ellerin said thoughtfully, his eyes never leaving Kale's. "And I see the future in your eyes." Kale stood alone on the high ridge, yet he was not alone. Ellerin's cloak was draped around his shoulders, a comforting presence. As the sun began to rise, the young knight turned his gaze to the horizon, a faint smile tugging at his lips. The future was beginning, and Kale was ready. Sleep now, my friend. The world is still turning, but here in Mistmere, all is quiet, all is safe, and a new dawn is coming. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, Kale and Ellerin approached a vast, untamed wood known as the Forest of Hollow Stars. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their silver bark gleaming in the gathering twilight. The air was filled with an otherworldly mist, and the leaves of the trees glimmered with a brilliant blue hue. The forest was ancient, untouched by time, and exuded an air of profound peace. Kale felt uneasy, the weight of the forest's presence heavy on his shoulders. This place, it feels like it's alive. Ellerin placed a comforting hand on Kale's shoulder. It is, he replied softly. These woods remember things the world has long since forgotten. The further they ventured into the forest, the more the world shifted. The chirping of birds died out, replaced by a profound stillness. The wind grew calm, and only the soft crunch of moss beneath their feet remained, a constant, comforting rhythm. Ellerin reached out with his hand, summoning a glowing orb of warm, pulsing light. It hovered above his palm, its soft illumination a contrast to the gathering darkness. Moving deeper into the forest, their breaths came in soft, measured inhalations, and their voices were barely a whisper. The glowing orb cast a gentle warmth upon the path ahead, its soft, rhythmic flickering guiding them through the forest's depths. Kale turned to Ellerin, curiosity in his eyes. I thought this place was sealed, he said. Why are we here? Ellerin looked at him with a solemn expression. It was, he replied. But there's something stirring in the roots, a long-forgotten sadness, and perhaps a truth that you need to witness. Kale felt a chill run down his spine, but he steeled himself, determined to understand what mysteries lay hidden within the Forest of Hollow Stars. Finally, after hours of slow and careful navigation, Kale and Ellerin stumbled upon a glade bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight. The silver beams filtering through the canopy spilled onto the glade, illuminating the clearing in a silvery, dreamlike shimmer. The moss beneath their feet became a lush carpet, rustling softly with each step. At the heart of the glade stood a broken statue, a winged woman with outstretched hands. Flowers bloomed from cracks in the stone, and soft glowing motes floated around her like a celestial haze. Ellerin knelt before the statue, gently brushing away the moss that clung to its base. The stone was cold and smooth under his fingertips, and he traced the lines of the wings reverently. Ellerin's voice was a soft whisper, his gaze fixed on the broken statue before them. She was a guardian, he said quietly, his fingers tracing the cracks in the stone. Of dreams, of peace. Kale stood beside him, his eyes never leaving the statue. What happened? Ellerin's head lifted slowly, his gaze meeting Kale's. The world forgot to believe. They set up camp near the grove, the soft crackling of the fire filling the air. The flames were an ethereal blue, casting a cozy, calming glow. Kale sat close to the fire, his gaze flickering over to Ellerin. You used to be like me, didn't you? He asked, intrigued. Ellerin chuckled softly, the sound rich and warm. I was more reckless, he replied. Kale couldn't help but tease. I don't see how that's possible. That night, Kale's subconscious carried him back to the forest, but it was different now. The stars were not lost in infinite blackness, but hung like shimmering lanterns from the trees above. The trees hummed a low, almost melodious song, their branches reaching out. The path was no longer dark. A strange, warm light lit the way, beckoning him forward. As Kale arrived at the heart of the forest, he found himself standing before a mirror-still lake. But instead of his own reflection, he saw the image of an older version of himself, clad in a cloak similar to Ellerin's, with a strength and wisdom in his eyes. The reflection's lips moved, but no sound emerged. Instead, a voice echoed in Kale's mind. To protect the light, you must carry the dark. The first light of dawn began to break over the horizon as Kale stirred awake. The fire was still crackling gently, and Ellerin was watching the changing sky. You saw it, Ellerin spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Kale nodded silently, his mind filled with the vivid dream. Ellerin's eyes met Kale's. Then it is time. But it was different now. The stars were not lost in infinite blackness, but hung like shimmering lanterns from the trees above. The trees hummed a low, almost melodious song, their branches reaching out. The path was no longer dark. A strange, warm light lit the way, beckoning him forward. As Kale arrived at the heart of the forest, he found himself standing before a mirror-still lake. But instead of his own reflection, he saw the image of an older version of himself, clad in a cloak similar to Ellorin's, with a strength and wisdom in his eyes. The reflection's lips moved, but no sound emerged. Instead, a voice echoed in Kael's mind. To protect the light, you must carry the dark. The first light of dawn began to break over the horizon as Kael stirred awake. The fire was still crackling gently, and Ellarin was watching the changing sky. You saw it, Ellarin spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Kael nodded silently, his mind filled with the vivid dream. Ellarin's eyes met Kael's. Then it is time. The massive trees, standing like ancient sentinels, opened their branches to reveal a well, surrounded by broken runes and flowers that glimmered faintly blue in the pale light. Ellarin's voice cut through the silence. The well of remembering. It holds the oldest truths, but it only reveals them to those who come with open hearts. Kael took a hesitant step forward, his eyes fixed on the shimmering water. As Kael peered into the well, fragments of scenes flashed before his eyes. He saw a younger Ellarin, fighting side by side with a warrior in gleaming golden armor, their movements a symphony of power and grace. Then the image shifted. The crystal towers crumbled, consumed by darkness. And then he saw himself, a child with eyes like stars, sheltered within a cradle in a forest grove. Kael's mind struggled to process the images, the weight of responsibility sinking in. Not as a knight, he finally spoke, his voice resolute, but as a bridge between two ages, between what was and what could be again. Ellarin watched him with a mix of sadness and understanding, his gaze heavy. Kael looked to Ellarin, his mind reeling. You knew? From the start? The sorcerer nodded. I knew the moment I found you, Kael. The forest, it called to you, just as it called to me. So many years ago. A moment of silence passed between them, the air rich with the scent of earth and the quiet whisper of the wind through the leaves. The stars twinkled gently in the night sky, reflected in the still water. Leaving the forest behind them, Kael noticed a change in the environment. The mist seemed to part before them, the air more breathable and the path more clear. The stars in the heavens burned more clearly. Ellarin's steps, though no slower, felt measured and more deliberate. He walked close to Kael, his hand gently touching the young knight's shoulder occasionally, not in need of support, but in a quiet display of affection. As they walked, Ellarin spoke softly, You will surpass me one day. A smile tugged at Kael's lips. Not yet, Ellarin nodded in agreement, his face betraying a hint of melancholy. No, he echoed, not yet. As they walked, the mist slowly obscured the forest behind them, hiding the forest of hollow stars from view, as if it had never been there at all. Though neither spoke the words aloud, both felt the difference. Kael's eyes were different now, reflecting an inner calm that had not been there before, and Ellarin, for the first time in many years, felt a warmth in his heart that had seemed lost to him. Quiet settled around them, wrapping them in a comfortable silence. The sun was still low on the horizon, its golden light illuminating the land with a soft early morning glow. The grass at their feet shone with dew, and their shadows stretched like ink stains across the hillside. They turned and looked back at the forest, the morning mist swirling around the ancient trees and the thick, silvery fog. It looked as it had for ages, still, silent and untouched. They walked in silence, the only sounds the soft crunch of their boots on the ground and the whisper of the morning breeze. Ellarin walked carefully, his old body betraying no sign of fatigue. Kael kept close, his hand instinctively resting on the hilt of his sword. It was a familiar habit but not a fearful one. Finally, after a long pause, Kael said something. Ellarin. Ellarin stopped walking, his eyes fixed on the old stone standing in the grass. He placed a hand on it, running his fingers over the worn runes. Kael came to a halt beside him, waiting. The words from their conversation at the well still echoed in his mind, and the questions remained. After a moment, Ellarin finally spoke. Yes, it was the truth. The child was you. Ellarin's gaze stayed fixed on the stone, the runes carved into its surface almost like a memory etched in rock. He murmured, I knew it all. Kael's heart beat faster, realization sinking in. And you watched over me, he said, guarded me. Kael absorbed Ellarin's words, the wind carrying them gently across the hillside. You suspected, he echoed, but you waited. The morning held a hushed stillness, as if the very world was waiting with them. As the day wound down, Kael and Ellarin entered the village of Karen's Hollow, where houses were nestled into the curve of the hillside and windmills dotted the skyline. Children darted through the gardens, laughter and shouts filling the quiet air. The windows glowed with soft candlelight, and the scent of wood fires and cooking spices hung heavily. Kale noticed the villagers watching them, their eyes filled with curiosity and respect. As they settled into the cozy inn by the orchard, Kale posed a question. "Is it always like this?" Ellerin chuckled softly, his eyes distant yet amused. "When you live long enough," he answered, "everyone becomes either someone you helped or someone you've lost." The room was small, cozy, the bed soft and inviting. Moonlight streamed through the open windows, carrying the soft sounds of the night. As the fire burned low, Kale turned to Ellerin, who was seated in a worn armchair. Kale studied Ellerin's face in the flickering candlelight, the pieces of the puzzle slowly fitting together in his mind. He spoke slowly, a hint of realization in his voice. You didn't bring me to the forest just to show me my past. You brought me so I could decide who I'll become." Ellerin's eyes seemed to dance in the candlelight, their gaze steady and almost knowing. "You're learning," he repeated softly, his voice carrying a touch of approval. In his dream, Kale found himself standing on a glass bridge. Stars gleamed above him, and below, the forest spread in an endless carpet of darkness. In the distance, a strange tower loomed, its windows lit by a soft, golden light. From the darkness stepped a woman draped in shadows, her voice at once unfamiliar and hauntingly familiar. "You are not yet whole," she said, her eyes never leaving Kale's face. "Yet you are no longer lost." She extended her hand, presenting Kale with a small silver key. It was shaped like a star, with a subtle glow within it. She leaned closer, her voice lowering to a hushed murmur. "When the sky burns, you must return." Kale's dreams quickly faded, replaced by the sight of the small room and the soft glow of the fireplace. Ellerin was still sitting in the armchair, his gaze fixed on the night sky beyond his window. He spoke quietly, his voice barely disturbing the silence. "You saw her, didn't you?" Kale turned to Ellerin, the dream still vivid in his mind. He asked quietly. Ellerin looked away from the sky, his eyes fixed on Kale with an intense but somehow affectionate gaze. "A piece of what's to come," he replied, his voice soft yet full of significance, "and a reminder of what still needs to be healed." The new day began with the soft light of dawn. The air was sweet with the smell of blooming blossoms, and the voices of birds echoed through the forest. The road, once dusty and quiet, was now covered by a soft carpet of soft, loamy soil. The trees themselves were adorned with young leaves, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of new life. Kale discussed his dreams with Ellerin as they walked, and the old sorcerer listened intently, occasionally asking gentle questions to fill in the pieces of the puzzle. The room was small, cozy, the bed soft and inviting. Moonlight streamed through the open windows, carrying the soft sounds of the night. As the fire burned low, Kale turned to Ellerin, who was seated in a worn armchair. Kale studied Ellerin's face in the flickering candlelight, the pieces of the puzzle slowly fitting together in his mind. He spoke slowly, a hint of realization in his voice. You didn't bring me to the forest just to show me my past. You brought me so I could decide who I'll become." Ellerin's eyes seemed to dance in the candlelight, their gaze steady and almost knowing. "You're learning," he repeated softly, his voice carrying a touch of approval. In his dream, Kale found himself standing on a glass bridge. Stars gleamed above him, and below, the forest spread in an endless carpet of darkness. In the distance, a strange tower loomed, its windows lit by a soft, golden light. From the darkness stepped a woman draped in shadows, her voice at once unfamiliar and hauntingly familiar. "You are not yet whole," she said, her eyes never leaving Kale's face. "Yet you are no longer lost." She extended her hand, presenting Kale with a small silver key. It was shaped like a star, with a subtle glow within it. She leaned closer, her voice lowering to a hushed murmur. "When the sky burns, you must return." Kale's dreams quickly faded, replaced by the sight of the small room and the soft glow of the fireplace. Ellerin was still sitting in the armchair, his gaze fixed on the night sky beyond his window. He spoke quietly, his voice barely disturbing the silence. "You saw her, didn't you?" Kale turned to Ellerin, the dream still vivid in his mind. He asked quietly. Ellerin looked away from the sky, his eyes fixed on Kale with an intense but somehow affectionate gaze. "A piece of what's to come," he replied, his voice soft yet full of significance, "and a reminder of what still needs to be healed." The new day began with the soft light of dawn. The air was sweet with the smell of blooming blossoms, and the voices of birds echoed through the forest. The road, once dusty and quiet, was now covered by a soft carpet of soft, loamy soil. The trees themselves were adorned with young leaves, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of new life. Kael discussed his dreams with Elerin as they walked, and the old sorcerer listened intently, occasionally asking gentle questions to fill in the pieces of the puzzle. The stream's surface was as still as glass, reflecting Kael's face with a clarity he'd never seen before. Here, the water itself seemed to listen, its soft rush seeming to say, "Tell me your thoughts." Kael studied himself, the reflection strangely calm and quiet. After a moment he turned away from it, a soft smile on his face. "It listened," he said quietly. Elerin, who had been quietly watching, raised one eyebrow. "And what did it hear?" Though Kael and Elerin knew not what the road ahead held, they felt a strange sense of anticipation. There was no fear, only a quiet expectation. This was not merely about destiny, or about some ancient flame waiting to be rediscovered. This was different. The road stretched out before them like a winding, shadowy path, long and unpredictable. They walked in comfortable silence, their footsteps echoing softly in the stillness of the early morning. The sun beat gently at their backs, the sky a quiet sea of blue above. Elerin walked with the quiet, graceful stride of someone who has seen 1,000 days much like this. Kael followed beside him, his heart filled with a strange mix of anticipation and quiet calm. The days blended one into the next. The sun rose and set. Kael and Elerin continued traveling eastward, their feet treading softly over a landscape dotted with hidden wonders. One morning, as the first hints of the coming dawn colored the sky, Kael looked at Elerin, the question burning in his heart. "You said a journey isn't about reaching the end," he murmured, his eyes fixed on the older man's face, "but rather noticing when it's changed. How do you know when that moment comes?" They made camp for the night at the edge of an ancient cliff, and Kael's eyes widened as he beheld the landscape spread out before him. A vast basin, stretching out for miles in every direction, was bathed in a gentle glow. Elerin's voice was hushed as he spoke, and Kael turned to find the old man standing beside him, gazing out over the darkened landscape. "This was once a city," he said quietly. "Long before there were kings or empires, they called it the shell of the world." Kael knelt on the stone, his fingers tracing the surface of the ancient stone. "It feels alive," he said softly, his touch gentle. Elerin stood beside him, his eyes fixed on the pulsing, glowing crater. He replied in a barely audible whisper, "Everything remembers, even if we forget." They rested under the stars that night, the deep, quiet hum of the crater a steady, ancient rhythm. In his dreams, Kael heard the wind whispering, carrying with it the soft echoes of longing and loss. The morning came soft and quiet, cloaked in a thick white blanket of fog. They moved cautiously, guided by the sound of running water and the calls of waking birds. In the mist ahead of them, shapes flickered and shifted, not frightening, but watchful. Eerily silent and graceful beings, shrouded by shadows, glided through the thick haze. Their faces were hidden, their robes flowing around them like the fog itself. Kael's hand went instinctively to his sword at the sight of the creatures, but Elerin's steady hand on his wrist held him back. "They are the mist shepherds," the older man murmured, his voice gentle but firm, "guardians of the in-between." One of the shepherds, its faceless hood turned toward them, slowly stepped forward, its long-fingered hand extended. In its palm lay a shimmering, silvery object, a memory. A vision appeared, a memory like rippling moonlight. Kael saw a younger version of himself, bruised and broken and alone in the woods, on the day Elerin had discovered him. Kael's voice shook as he whispered, "Why?" Elerin replied softly, "To remind you what it means to be found." The memory faded, and the shepherds faded with it, melting back into the mist like ghosts. The vision faded, the shepherds melting back into the fog, silent and ephemeral, stayed rooted in place, his eyes still fixed on the spot where they had been. And then, for the first time in a long while, silent tears rolled down his cheeks. It was not a cry of pain or bitterness. Rather, it was a release of emotions he hadn't realized he had been holding back, a moment of profound understanding. As the day turned to evening, they came across an old chapel, its stone walls crumbling and its stained glass windows broken. Moss and vines grew along its decaying sides. Within the walls of the abandoned building, they found a fire pit, benches rotted away by time, and words carved into the stone above the altar. "Let those who are lost light the fire and be warmed." Elerin's hand lifted, and without a word, he cast a spell. The fire pit flared to life, its golden flames dancing with shadows, casting long, shifting shapes on the walls. Kael sat beside the glowing fire, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames. "I'm afraid of who I'll have to become," he admitted softly, the words barely audible in the quiet chapel. Elerin sat down beside him, the light from the fire painting his face in warm hues. For a moment, he said nothing. Finally, he added another log to the flames. "You should be," he replied quietly, "for power without fear forgets what it was meant for." Kale's gaze fixed on Ellerin, his question hanging in the air. "Did you fear it too?" "Every day," Ellerin replied. They stayed by the comforting fire, watching as the flames slowly reduced to glowing embers. Even sleep found them there, curling around them like a warm blanket, the night's silence broken only by the occasional whisper of the wind through the broken glass windows. And in the stillness of the night, they found unexpected peace. As dawn broke, they departed the crumbling chapel, leaving the quiet night behind. Ahead of them, a narrow, twisting path led upward toward a distant peak that vanished into the clouds. "The star spire," Ellerin murmured, his gaze fixed on the mountain, "where fate ends or begins." The journey up the mountain was silent, the sound of their footsteps the only sound on the winding trail. On their way up the mountain, no dangers appeared. There was only the wind, the endless sky, and the thoughts that filled their minds. At the peak, a tall, smooth black stone stood alone against the sky. Ellerin touched it gently, his eyes closed. Slowly, he began to kneel. Kale watched, frozen, his heart tightening in his chest. "Ellerin?" he called out, his voice carrying like a whisper. Ellerin's voice held nothing but peace and acceptance. "This is where I remain," he said quietly, "where the road ends for me." Kale stepped forward, his heart heavy with grief and anger. "No," he said, his voice betraying his pain. "You said we would finish this together." Ellerin's smile was gentle, his eyes filled with the warmth of 1,000 memories. "We did," he replied. "But this is not your end. For you, it is your beginning." The black stone pulsated gently, then, once more, began to fade. No pain, no fear, like the soft light of the stars in a fading night. The final words from his lips were like a gentle breeze carrying the weight of 1,000 years, 1,000 tears, 1,000 hopes. "Protect the light." The silence was deafening, the weight of loss heavy on Kale's shoulders. Ellerin's final words echoed in the air, "Be what I could not, and more." The wind rustled through the trees, and the sky was vast and endless. Kale stood alone, but his heart was not broken. Now, it was aflame with purpose. Kale slowly walked down the mountain, the black cloak of Ellerin draped around him. In his chest, the light of the star spire burned softly, casting a warm glow. He moved at a steady pace, in no rush to be anywhere. But as he walked, something changed. The birds sang more clearly and the rivers glimmered like liquid silver as they wound toward the sea. The world was becoming more vibrant, more alive, as if the very air was changing, as if it knew. As the magic within him settled, it was not like a flame, but rather like roots. He retraced the steps he and Ellerin had taken, back to the path through the forests, to the hollow and the woods that had seen them both. He finally came to stand at the edge of the forest, where the fog had once shrouded the ancient trees from sight. And there he knelt, his voice soft and sincere as he whispered his words of gratitude. "Thank you." The wind gently carried his words, catching them like feathers upon its current and letting them drift into the trees. And from somewhere distant, from places only accessible to the realm of the magical, a soft, quiet voice echoed like a whisper across the water. "You are ready." As the whispered words echoed through the trees, an air of comfort and acceptance filled the forest. The stars sparkled down like silent witnesses, remembering every moment. In the gentle hush of the night, the road continued to stretch out, unrushed and open. Now,